Hello my beautiful people, this is Dedan, your African storyteller, and today I bring you a story that is shaking the heart of Christianity across the globe. Welcome to my channel where we explore untold African stories, deep cultural insights and powerful global events that connect to the soul of this continent. Now, if you're new here, please, I want you to feel right at home, okay? Please click that red subscribe button, like this video and join our growing community of thinkers, dreamers and doers. And to all my returning subscribers, thank you for walking with me on this journey. Your support means the world. Now, today I want you to pause whatever you're doing, okay? Because this is not just news. This is history. On May 8th, 2025, that was yesterday actually, something remarkable happened. White smoke rose from the Sistine Chapel. Crowds in St. Peter's Square roared. The bells rang out across Vatican City. The words echoed once again, Habemus Papam, we have a pope. By this time, the story didn't end there. No, this time something deeper began. The world was introduced to a new spiritual leader, Pope Leo XIV. But who is this man really? And what journey has he walked? And most importantly, what does his rise mean for Africa and the entire Catholic Church worldwide? So please, grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, because we are going deep into the life, the legacy, and the impact of the man that is now leading 1.3 billion Catholics around the world. Now, let's start at the very beginning. Robert Francis Prevost was born on September 14th, 1955 in Chicago, Illinois in the US, America. And his background is not one of the wealth or privilege. He was raised in a modest, working-class family rooted in strong Catholic traditions. And from a young age, young Robert was known for his humility, intelligence, and an unusual sensitivity to the struggles of others. So these qualities would shape his destiny. Okay, his decision to join the Order of St. Augustine as a young man marked the beginning of a journey of service. And this was not just a choice of career. No, it was a call. He felt drawn to the life of discipline, learning, and most importantly, helping others. So he studied mathematics at Villanova University, but soon found his calling in theology and philosophy. So he would go on to study canon law in Rome, earning degrees that would later place him among the most respected minds in the Catholic Church. But it was not the academic degrees that defined him, no, it was what he did with them. Now let me tell you something about this man. After ordination, he was sent to Peru on a mission. And it is here that Robert Prevost truly transformed into the man we now know as Pope Leo XIV. In the dust, poverty, and spiritual hunger of the people of Chiclayo, he immersed himself completely. He became a brother to the people. He spoke their language, lived among them, celebrated Mass in simple chapels made of wood and mud, and even became a citizen of Peru. Unlike many church leaders who returned to Europe after missionary work, Prevost stayed. He led, he healed, taught and worked with the people for over a decade. And in 2001, he was elected Prior General of the Augustinians, a post he held for 12 years. So his leadership was marked by humility and reform, and he encouraged dialogue across cultures and focused on education and justice for the poor. So later he became the Bishop of Chiclayo and was later appointed by Pope Francis to one of the most powerful positions in the Vatican, Prefect of Dicastery of Bishops. And this made him responsible for overseeing the appointment of bishops worldwide. So this role gave him a global perspective, one rooted not in Rome's bureaucracy but in the reality of the people. And also when the conclave began after the passing of Pope Francis, Robert Prevost was not just a candidate, no, he was a hope. Cardinals admired his ability to connect, to listen, to bring the people together. And so on May 8th, which was yesterday, he was chosen as the 267th Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. He took the name Leo XIV, evoking the legacy of Pope Leo XIII, a reformer and defender of workers' rights. Okay, so this was no accident. Pope Leo XIV, like his namesake, intends to be a bridge between tradition and the modern world. So what does this mean for Africa? Because I know you're wondering. So let's start with the numbers. Africa is home to one of the fastest growing Catholic populations in the world. In countries like Nigeria, Uganda, DR Congo, and Kenya, the church is not just surviving, it is thriving. Churches are full, seminaries are packed, youth ministries are live. But despite the growth, Africa has often been underrepresented at the highest levels of the Vatican. Pope Leo XIV wants to change that. In his very first week as Pope, he spoke openly about the church's responsibility to support Africa's growth. He announced a Vatican-African partnership on health and education, a new initiative to build hospitals, train teachers, and support rural dioceses. He also appointed more African cardinals to key roles, including a special advisory council made up of African theologians, bishops, and lay people. He's pushing for more African, music, language inclusion, and indigenous traditions to be embraced within the global church. And it's not just talk. Pope Leo XIV has already scheduled visits to different parts of Africa, But his vision is not without challenges. There are conservative forces within the church who see his embrace of cultural diversity as a threat to tradition, because some worry that including more African customs will water down doctrine. Pope Leo XIV addresses these concerns not by confrontation, but education. He says the church is not a museum of silence. It is a living body, and Africa is one of its beating hearts. So as Africans, we must ask ourselves, how do we respond? Do we wait for Rome to define our praise? Or do we stand up and define it ourselves? The rise of the Pope Leo XIV is a wake-up call, and the spotlight is on us. We must build stronger Catholic communities. We must support our local clergy, invest in youth education, defend our values, and speak with our own voice and one voice on issues like climate change, poverty, and justice. And we must also embrace our identity. Being African and being Catholic are not two separate things. Our faith is richer when it wears our colors, okay? It sings our songs and speaks our languages. Pope Leo XIV understands this, and he sees the future of the church not in ancient European cities, but in the dusty roads of Gulu, the hills of Rwanda, the lakes of Malawi, and the crowded parishes of Lagos. And now as we watch the purpose unfold, we must do more than celebrate. We must participate. This is our time, okay? This is our time. This is our time as Africans. And I know there is a very big question, okay? A very big question that many Africans were asking before and even after the conclave. Why didn't Africa get a pope? Okay, with such a vibrant and growing Catholic population and many highly respected African cardinals like Cardinal Peter Turkson of Ghana or Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo of DR Congo. Many were hopeful that this would be the moment Africa would actually see one of its own on the throne of St. Peter. The truth is, the selection of a pope, okay, is a complex mix of spiritual discernment, politics, geography, and unity. Some cardinals still prefer leadership from traditionally dominant Catholic regions, and others may worry that electing an African pope could be seen as too radical, a shift too quickly. So there is also a perception that the African church, though strong in faith, is still emerging in terms of global influence and theological scholarship. Okay? That one you must know. That one you must know. So it's really hard for us as Africans to get a pope, because I'm not afraid to say that. Now, let me take you back, okay? Like in time, because if we truly want to understand why Africa has never had a pope, we need to explore the roots of Christianity in Africa. Christianity is not a Western religion, okay? It began in the Middle East and it reached Africa very early. So in fact, Egypt was one of the first places Christianity spread after the death of Jesus. So by the 1st and 2nd centuries, North Africa had become a major center of Christian thought and theology. Think of names like St. Augustine, if you can know. St. Augustine of Hippo, a Berber from present-day Algeria and one of the most influential Christian theologians in history. Or, for example, someone like, just another person is called Tertullian, the African who gave us the word Trinity. So these were African men, very brilliant, very bold, and foundational to Christianity. They wrote in Latin, debated Greek philosophers, and shaped the church long before Europe became Christian. So Africa was not just present, Africa was leading. In fact, 3 early popes were African: Pope Victor I, Pope Mercedes, and Pope Gelasius I. All of them served between the 2nd and 5th centuries, when the center of Christianity was still closely tied to North Africa. But something changed. With the rise of Islam in the 7th century, North Africa began to lose its Christian dominance. Churches were destroyed, communities disappeared, and the intellectual centers of Christianity in Africa, like Carthage and Alexandria, began to fade. So the Roman Catholic Church, meanwhile, became more centralized in Europe, especially in Rome. From this point on, popes would come almost entirely from Italy and other parts of Europe. Now, fast forward more than 1,000 years, Africa's Christian revival began in the colonial era. European missionaries brought Christianity deeper into sub-Saharan Africa, and many Africans embraced the gospel, but they were often denied leadership. The church hierarchy was mostly white. African priests were trained, but few were allowed to rise beyond local leadership. And it wasn't until the 20th century, in the 1950s and 1960s, that African bishops began to be ordained in large numbers. So one of the earliest voices for African leadership was Cardinal Laurent Lugambwa of Tanzania. In 1960, he became the first black African cardinal, and it was a huge moment. The Africans seemed to be recognizing the power of African Catholic, but again, no pope. Let's talk about demographics. Today, Africa is the future of the Catholic Church. In Europe and North America, church attendance is declining. In Africa, it's growing. In Nigeria, Congo, Uganda, Angola, and Kenya. All these are producing millions of devout Catholics. Seminaries in Africa are full, while many in Europe are empty. Some experts even say that by the year 2050, 40% of all Catholics will be Africans. So if Africa is the future, then why hasn't that future been reflected in the papacy? There are several reasons. First, geopolitics and Vatican tradition. Let me tell you something. The Vatican is based in Italy. For centuries, the College of Cardinals, the men who choose the Pope, has been dominated by Europeans, especially Italians. And even now, about half of the voting cardinals are European. They know each other, speak the same languages, they often share the same worldview. Naturally, they tend to vote for someone like them, someone they understand and trust. And secondly, we have the language and culture familiarity. To be the Pope, you must speak multiple languages, manage a massive bureaucracy, and represent the church to the entire world. So many African cardinals are deeply spiritual and pastoral, but they may not have served long in Rome or held high positions in the Curia, which is the Vatican's government. So this gives them less visibility and influence during a papal conclave. And thirdly, silent Russia and culture bias. Though never spoken publicly, but some insiders believe that there is still unconscious resistance to choosing a black pope. The idea of a non-European leading a 2,000-year-old European-based institution is still very difficult for many conservative Catholics. And it is not always about hatred. Sometimes it is just discomfort with change. But times are changing, One African name has often been mentioned in papal discussions. That is Cardinal Robert Sarr from Guinea, a brilliant theologian and former head of the Congregation for Divine Worship. Cardinal Sarr is known for his deep spiritually conservative views and humble background. And he grew up in a small village in Guinea, trained in France and Rome, and served the church globally. So some saw him as papable, a man who could become pope. But when Pope Francis was elected in 2013, the cardinals again chose a non-African. Even though he was from the global south, Argentina, he was still European in heritage. And Cardinal Sarr remained a powerful voice, but was often criticized for his conservative stance, especially compared to Pope Francis. Then there is Cardinal Peter Turkson from Ghana, another strong candidate, charismatic, experienced, and with global recognition. He speaks English, he speaks French, he speaks Italian fluently, and has worked closely on issues of climate change, justice, and poverty, issues deeply important to Africans. Yet, despite his global profile, he too has never been seriously considered as a front runner during a conclave. So what will it take? It may take time, The College of Cardinals is slowly becoming more diverse. Pope Francis has appointed many African, Asians, and Latin American cardinals. So this changes the voting base over time. More voices from Africa will be in the room where decisions are made. And also the next pope, whenever that is, for example, will likely need to reflect the global church. A pope from Africa would send a powerful message of inclusion, hope, and representation, and it would remind the world that faith knows no race or color. that leadership is not about geography, but it's about wholeness, vision, and courage. Still, it must be said, Africa is already, not tomorrow, but today. Africa has brilliant theologians, Africa has saints, Africa has bishops who speak 5 languages, lead millions and face war, poverty, and, a lot without fear. So Africa has a church that is alive, vibrant, young, and growing. So if the purpose is to reflect the heart of the church, then Africa's moment is not far. But maybe the delay is also, providential. Perhaps God is maybe preparing something special. A Pope from Africa, not just maybe for the sake of history, but for the sake of healing, unity, and transformation. When that day comes, it won't just be Africa that celebrates, maybe it will be the entire world. So why has Africa never had a Pope? The answer is very complex. It's a mix of history, tradition, power dynamics, and prejudice. But history is not destiny. The church is changing slowly, and Africa's time will come, okay? So why do you think, should the next Pope be African? Which African cardinal do you think is most ready to lead the global church? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like this video if you learned something new, and share it with your friends who love African history and faith stories. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into African faith, courage, and global influence. And, that's it. We have a new Pope, so we really need to celebrate and be happy, okay? I think we need to be happy. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much, guys, for being here with me. So thank you for joining me on this incredible journey, And if you were inspired by the history, don't just keep it to yourself. Just like the video, drop a comment below and share it with someone who believes in faith, history, and the power of Africa. And if you have not already, please subscribe, okay? Subscribe. I've got more powerful stories coming your way. Until next time, this is Dedan, your storyteller, signing off with love, with pride, and with unwavering hope for our beautiful continent. May God bless you, may God bless Africa, and may God bless Pope Leo XIV. I love you so much, guys. See you on the next video.